Well, good evening to everyone. Hope your week is going well. I'm glad we can spend some time together. We're going to be studying tonight in Proverbs once more, and we want to start with our memory work. Proverbs 4:7, our theme verse for Proverbs. Wisdom is what? Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Okay? Very good. Proverbs 18:24 tells us, a man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend who sticketh closer than a brother. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord. I'm not doing that. Someone's cheating. All right. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thine own understanding. In all thy ways, acknowledge Him, and He will what? Direct your paths. Okay. Proverbs 14:34. Is a reproach to any people. Proverbs 13:15. Good understanding giveth favor, but the way of transgressors is hard. Okay? Proverbs 17:22. A merry heart doth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit, what does it do? Drieth the bones. Okay? And our verse for this week, Proverbs 14:27, tells us the fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, to depart from the snares of death. All right? And I know that's not probably a real common or familiar proverb to us, but it just fits in with everything that we've been talking about, how that this wise man is trying to instill wisdom into his sons. And if they will fear the Lord, it will keep them in the right way. It'll save them from going to hell. And so he is trying to instill in them the fear of the Lord. It is a fountain of life, and it will deliver from the snares of death. Okay? To depart from the snares of death. Now, the one for this week, a little easier, and that is, whoso keepeth his mouth and his tongue keepeth his soul from troubles. We can all say amen. All right? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the tongue. And before we start looking at these verses, I want to just ask you, if you had to give someone advice, let's just say you're sitting down with your grandson or your daughter or a good friend, a younger person, what advice would you give them about their speech? What kind of advice would you give? All right, and what's the reason? Okay. I heard you got 2 ears and 1 mouth so that you listen twice as much as you talk. All right. Okay. What else would you tell them? All right. Yeah. I got an award in my senior English class. And the award was for the person most likely to start his mouth without his mind in gear. I don't think my English teacher liked me very much. All right. What else would you tell someone? John, you were saying something? All right. Slow to wrath as well, right? Yeah, okay. Quick to hear, swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. What else? Yeah, you just can't get it back. Can't get it back. Did I tell you guys about what I did in a vacation Bible school one time to try and emphasize this idea? I took a pillow and I had some of the young people come up and we cut that pillow open and I had them just throw the feathers. And those things went everywhere. And then I said, okay, now go get them back. Go gather them back up. And that was just in the auditorium. Our janitor was not happy with me. I had no idea. We were picking up feathers for 6 months. I mean, they just went everywhere. But I'd heard that before about a wise man telling a young person to go on a mountain and throw the feathers like that from a pillow. And then he said, okay, now what do you want me to do? Go get them. Well, there's no way. Well, that's right. There's no way to get those words back once you've spoken them. Okay? All right, what else? This is great. You guys know a lot. Okay, that's pretty good, isn't it? All right, that's pretty good. Yes? Okay, all right. Yeah, it's not just the words you speak, but the words that you write as well. Okay, and boy, that's caused a lot of trouble. I don't know why it is. There's probably studies that have been done, but we as a people, I'm not talking necessarily about you, but in general, people will write things and text things that they wouldn't say. But they'll send them over the internet. And there's really not any difference. People see them. And it's really a lot of times more damaging because they can't tell the way you mean it. There's no inflection in the written word. So they don't know, is he being sarcastic? Is he just trying to be funny? Or is this, is this person trying to be mean? Or what is it, So that can do a lot of damage. Okay, what else? Good stuff. Anything else? Okay, all right. Very good. Very good. Yes? All right. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Okay? All right. Well, would it surprise you to find out that almost everything that you have said is what we'll see in the book of Proverbs? And that's not surprising because we've been trying to share wisdom, good advice. Well, that's what you find in the book of Proverbs. The advice that God wants us to follow as we do our best to serve Him. And the Bible has a great deal to say about our speech. James writes about it in James chapter 3 in particular, and he talks about how difficult it is for us to control our speech. And no man can do it, he says, but with God we can. But with God we can. And so you don't throw up your hands and just say, well, no one can do it, so why even try? No, with God we can. And so we want to talk tonight about these ideas. The first thing, 3 things in particular we're going to look at. We're going to talk about the power of the tongue, and then we're going to talk about the good the tongue has the potential to do, but then finally the evil that he warns about. So let's talk about, first of all, the power of the tongue. Look at these verses with me. Proverbs 21 and verse 23. And this is our memory verse, by the way. Whoso keepeth his mouth and his tongue keepeth his soul from troubles. How true that is. If you control what you say, you will go a long way in keeping yourself out of trouble. I know that we can go around the room and talk about mistakes we've made with our words. Probably just in the last week. But, we say something and maybe it comes out differently than what we meant for it to, or maybe we just didn't think about what we said and how somebody might take it. And so it can be, a very difficult thing. But again, one of the things you all said was think before you speak. And if we would just do that, I think especially when you're talking to parents about their children, isn't it easy to correct or to figure out and find the faults and tell people what they need to do with their kids? That's the easiest thing in the world to do because you don't have to do it. But when you say something, that mother, she may be at her limit that day, and just one more criticism might be just too much for her. You just got to be careful about that. What do we say? That the gates that our words need to pass through, those 3 gates. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Make sure it's true. But you don't have to say everything that's true. All right? When your wife says, "Does this make me look fat?" You better come up with a good way to answer that. All right? And if you come up with it, let me know. All right? I'm just really good at changing the subject usually, Or let's go shopping or whatever. But anyway, see, I'm already in trouble. So anyway, but is it kind? Is this something going to encourage someone, or is it hurtful? And is it necessary? There are things that I'm sure you could tell me, but I don't need to know them. I don't have a need to know those things. I'd better off if I don't. And so, make it pass through those gates. But if we can keep control of our mouths, it'll go a long way in keeping us from trouble in our relationships with each other. Proverbs 18 and verse 21, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof." Makes me think of the king who speaks, and literally life and death are coming out of his mouth, whether a person lives or dies. Remember the Medes and the Persians? What do you remember about their law, their kings, and the word of their king? The Medes remember the Medes? The Darius, he's the one that put Daniel in the lion's den. Huh? Yeah. Isn't that a dumb law? You'd have to be perfect to have a law like that. But they said, whatever the king said, it can't be altered, it can't be changed. And so, if he spoke in haste about executing someone, couldn't be altered or changed. That's the end of that person. Literally life and death were in the tongue. And so often it is with us. You think about a witness. And Proverbs is going to talk about how important it is for us to be truthful with our words. False witness. A false witness can cost someone their lives. You read of examples of that in the Bible. Someone like Naboth, he lost his life because false witnesses lied about him. When Jesus was on trial, they paid false witnesses. Now the problem was, even the false witnesses couldn't get their story together, couldn't agree, and so they couldn't get 2 or 3 to agree, but they tried to bring about his death. Proverbs 13:3, "He that keepeth his mouth keepeth his life, but he that openeth wide his lips shall have destruction." Great power in the tongue. Proverbs 10 verse 19, "In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise." What's that verse mean? What's the first part of it mean? The more you talk, what? All right. Okay, yeah, you're going to cause yourself more problems. You know, the more you talk, isn't that what a lawyer wants someone to do? Or a police officer? Get them talking. Because the more they talk, the more likely it is they're going to reveal something. Well, you know, the more that we talk, more likely it is we're going to make mistakes. What's that? They really do, don't they? And even the innocent person. Don't say anything till I get there, right? But if we're people, and it's because there's such a danger there. Think about it for a moment. Think of all the awful things that can be done with the tongue. Sinful things that can be done with our speech. And the more you talk, the more likely it is that you get yourself involved in those things. All right. Proverbs 17:28. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise, and he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. I think Tony said something along those lines. It's better to be thought a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt. You know, that there's a lot of truth there. All right. Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Great power in these words. Proverbs 16:24, pleasant words are as an honeycomb, sweet to the soul and health to the bones. Words, they can just build you up. You know, how long can you go on a good compliment? Doesn't that encourage you? I like getting cards to some degree. I tell my family, like at birthday, don't get me a card. All right? And the reason is because they get me a card and they don't write anything in it. You know, happy birthday, you know, from your kids, you know. And that's great. That's fine. Just give me the $5 or whatever, you know, and I'll be happier. All right? But what would make it different is if they filled up that thing with their thoughts. I mean, you know, guys are the worst. We go and we got to get a card for certain days, you know, and so you go and you pick out a card and you look at the first one and you open it up and, yeah, I think I'd say that. Okay, here we go, you know. And that's it. Well, it's going to mean a whole lot more if you write the words, even if they're not as poetic, but they're from you and from your heart. That means a whole lot more. And words are powerful to build up and to stir emotion. Sweet like finding a honeycomb, he says. Proverbs 15 verse 23, a man hath joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season, how good it is. How good it is. So there's great power with our speech. There are good uses of the tongue. Look at a few of these passages with me. Proverbs 10 and verse 20. And what you'll notice in a lot of these, there is a contrast. So it almost could fall into the other category as well as being a danger of the tongue. But Proverbs 10:20 says, the tongue of the just is as choice silver. The heart of the wicked is little worth. Proverbs 10:31, the mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom, but the froward tongue shall be cut out. What's a froward tongue? You read that in the King James Version, froward, several times in the book of Proverbs. Perverse, all right, crooked, twisted. That's what's being talked about, okay? Very good. All right? Proverbs 12 and verse 18. There is that speaketh like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is health. Make you feel good. Those that use it properly. Proverbs 15 verse 2. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. Proverbs 15 verse 4. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. Remember the virtuous woman, Proverbs 31:26. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. Proverbs 10 and verse 11. The mouth of a righteous man is a well of life, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. Proverbs 15:28. The heart of the righteous studieth to answer, but the mouth of the wicked poureth out evil things. Proverbs 12:25. Heaviness in the heart of man maketh it stoop, but a good word maketh it glad. Proverbs 25:11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pitchers of silver. And Proverbs 17:27. He that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. Let me ask you, what are some of the good things we can do with our speech? I know we've talked about some things already. What are some good things we can do with our words? Build someone up. All right. Preach the gospel. Absolutely. Absolutely. Pray. Okay. Show support. Sing praises. Okay. Our worship. All right. What else? Good things we can do with our speech. Comfort someone. All right. Okay. All right. Teach. Okay. Instruct. What's that? Acknowledge God. Confess Christ. Okay. All right. Wonderful thoughts. Great things. And here Proverbs gives us all this advice about using our speech in a good way. And when we do, it builds up, it strengthens, it encourages, it praises. It's a wonderful thing. He warns us here to spare our words. I went to a graduation one time. It was my wife's graduation from college. She had gone back to school, and the kids were with me. They were teenagers. The oldest ones were. And this fellow was giving the graduation speech, and he decided he'd share some wisdom from Will Rogers. And so he gave all these witty sayings that Will Rogers said. Well, I don't think the kids knew who Will Rogers was. But anyway, one of the statements he made was, Will Rogers said, never miss a good opportunity to shut up. Well, he kept on going, and my son said, hey, Dad, he missed that one, didn't he? Well, I know that, not every moment is the time to be silent, but you don't have to keep saying the same thing over and over. When someone's preaching or teaching, I really don't mind how long they preach or teach, as long as they're giving me information. As long as they're, telling me something, teaching me something. I don't want them to just tell me what they've already told me over and over again. I remember one preacher, I'd go hear, and he would preach almost the same sermon on Sunday night that he did on Sunday morning. And you felt like, I've heard this. Now, he might have been like the one preacher that preached the same sermon 5 Sundays in a row. And the elder said, why are you doing this? You got to go on. You got to preach something else. And he said, I'm waiting for this one to take. Well, that might be the case. I don't know. But have you ever sat and listened to someone and they talk an hour and a half goes by and it feels like 20 minutes. Now, that would have been a good opportunity for you all to say, yeah, every time you preach, Tim, that's the way it feels. You probably are thinking just the opposite. Feels like 20 minutes, feels like an hour and a half. But at any rate, there is great, great good that can be done with the tongue. But there is also power for evil. And folks, that's the way it always is when you have something that has great power. There is potential for great good, but there is potential for great evil, for destruction. And so it is with our speech. And so he warns about some of these things. Proverbs 6 and verse 17, remember that list of things that God says are an abomination unto him. A proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood. Verse 19, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren. 3 of the 7 deal with matters of our speech. We've got to guard our tongues. Proverbs 17 verse 20. He that hath a froward heart findeth no good, and he that hath a perverse tongue falleth into mischief. Proverbs 6 and verse 2. Thou art snared with the words of thy mouth. Thou art taken with the words of thy mouth. Your own words have a way, if you're not careful, of indicting you. You know, you admit your own faults with your own words. Proverbs 8 and verse 13, the fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the froward mouth. There's that froward, the perverse mouth, do I hate. God doesn't want us to have a perverse or froward mouth. Anybody here ever have their mouth washed out with soap? A few of you. I don't imagine that hurt anybody too bad. It's not much fun, but it teaches a pretty important lesson. All right. Proverbs 11, verse 9, a hypocrite with his mouth destroyeth his neighbor, but through knowledge shall the just be delivered. Speaking ill of someone else. A fool's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul. Proverbs 18 and verse 7. All right. A lot more for us to look at. Let's see. Well, one of the things he warns about is gossip. The King James uses the word tale-bearer. We've got to be careful about that. And so we guard against it. And we don't want to speak it. We don't want to listen to it. It takes 2 for that to happen. And we want to give thought before we speak as well. We want to be careful about flattery and avoid that as well. We're out of time, but let me just real quickly ask you guys this. We mentioned several of the good things that we can do with our words. What are some of the evil things that we need to avoid? Lying, we've talked about that. We've seen it from Proverbs. Gossip, we just mentioned that. Being hurtful, being ugly with your words. Okay? Swearing. All right. Taking God's name in vain. Profanity. Ridicule. Okay. Ridicule. You know, I hear people talk sometimes, and I just, you kiss your mother with that mouth. Why? How can you? I mean, that's filthy. Why do you want to be that way? People say that's adult language. I don't believe that for a moment. It is immature, is what it is. All right. Okay. What else? It does, doesn't it? Okay. When I had a friend in college that swore all the time. Well, we shouldn't have called him names, but we called him Webster. because of his big dictionary, all the words. But anyway, probably didn't help him, but false teaching. We talked about speaking the gospel, preaching the gospel. False teaching is a terrible thing that can be done. These are things we've got to avoid, all right? Hey, I appreciate it so much. Continue looking in the book of Proverbs and notice what Solomon gives us about our speech. And remember, we can keep our words under control, not on our own, but with the help of God. Thank you.